The Solo Show is brought to you by Victor Naraki Realtor, serving Disney and the greater Orlando area with celebratingflorida.com and disneyatyourdoorstep.com.
Coming up on The Solo Show.
Have you ever been to the Oscars?
Yes, I've been a couple of times to the Oscars, and it really is an amazing experience.
Stan welcomes Dave Bossert for his first visit to the Solo Studios. Dave is an artist, author, and a member of the Motion Picture Academy. Dave and Stan are talking about everyone's favorite award ceremony, the Oscars. And that's coming up next on The Solo Show.
Hello, I'm Realtor Victor Naraki. And at one time, I had created a search for you online for homes near Disney World. I wanted to take a moment to introduce you to my brand new website. Same name, new functionality, celebratingflorida.com. If you're still looking for property near Disney World, please take a look at the website. If it's a future wish, visit disneyatyourdoorstep.com for all my social media links. Thank you, and hopefully we will talk soon.
Hello and welcome to the Academy Awards preview for 2025. I'm Ken, the voiceover guy, and we're going to try to get a few comments from some of the fabulous stars who are entering the Solo Studios for tonight's show. Hey, here comes Skipper Jay. Jay, any comments about tonight's guest, Dave Bossert? Dave is an author and artist and a member of the Motion Picture Academy. Jay? Jay? Well, he must be on his way to ride the Tower of Terror for the 475th time today. And look, there's the lovely and talented Holly Crawford. Holly, who are you wearing tonight? Holly? Well, she seems to be in a hurry as well, but she said she's wearing Marvelous on Main Street. Dave Bossert is entering the studios now, so I guess we should get on with the show. Here's your host, last year's nominee for Best Original Screenplay for the film If I Mispronounce Your Name, It's an Honor. Here's Stan Solo.
Hello and welcome to another edition of The Solo Show. I am Stan Solo as always, and joining me today, oh man, I got a very special guest. He is artist, filmmaker, author, Dave Bossert. Welcome to the show. This is your first time on The Solo Show, but I have talked to you on Grand Circle Tour before.
Yes, I've been on Grand Circle Tour a couple of times, and thank you for having me on The Solo Show. It's great to see you, Stan.
Yeah.
And by the way, my last name is Bossert.
Bossert. You know,
Bossert. You were giving the French pronunciation.
The Canadian to me. I always tell people it's an honor if I mispronounce your name because that means you're somebody. You've made it. It's like being on the cover of the Rolling Stone.
That's all right.
I mispronounce your name. I am so bad with names. I'm so sorry.
No worries at all. Honestly, it's one of those names where it happens frequently, and a lot of times we get the French pronunciation.
There you go. Artist, filmmaker, author. Can you tell us a little bit about each? It's the artist. You're a Disney artist, obviously.
Well, I'm a lifelong artist, and part of that has been being a Disney artist as well. But I do art on my own time, my own type of art. That's kind of ebbed and flowed over the years, depending on the how busy I was working and all of those kinds of things.
And graduation from Caltech?
No, not Caltech, but from California Institute of the Arts.
Right.
CalArts,
sorry. Filmmaker,
yes. I mean, the fact that I was part of film crews working on all these great animated films through the renaissance of Disney animation, and also produced and directed a number of films and made a number of documentaries.
Right. And you were nominated for an Oscar with your team, I believe, with Beauty and the Beast.
Well, something, I wouldn't have been nominated. My name wasn't on there, but so many films I worked on were nominated for Academy Awards and won Academy Awards.
IMDb, you misled me because it says that you were nominated for an Oscar for that one.
Well, IMDb always misleads people.
Yeah.
It's one of those databases that has a lot of erroneous information.
For sure. And then author, you have several books out.
Yes, I depending on how you count, I either have 13 books or 15 books, because 2 of my books have special editions which have additional material in them, so you can count them either as the same book or as 2 different versions of the same book. So 13 or 15 books, you count it.
So I'm Canadian, so I'll go the metric way and I'll call it 15.
Okay, awesome.
So that works out. That way everybody's happy. And podcaster, you got the Skull Rock podcast.
Yes. And you know, the podcast I do with Aljon Go, and Aljon is a great partner on the podcast, and really the wizard behind the scenes. You know, he's the one that gets it up every week onto all these different platforms so people can access it. And I'm so grateful to be doing the podcast with him.
So Al is basically my Ken is your Al, except he's on more than Ken is.
Okay. Yeah. You know, I mean, I like to say that, you know, it's an equal partnership between, Aljon and I co-hosting the Skull Rock podcast. But honestly, I think he does more heavy lifting than I do.
I say the same thing about Ken. Ken does the heavy lifting. All I do is I record it, I hit record, and I hit stop, and then he takes over. It's his baby after that. Oldmillpress.com is where you'd go to find your books.
It's a boutique publisher, and they've published a handful of my books, as well as Disney Editions has published sort of the other half of my books.
Yeah.
So,
and Amazon as well, I think, works too.
Well, yeah, you can find all of my books on Amazon.com.
Yeah.
Or Barnes & Noble.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we're here to talk about the upcoming Oscars, the Academy Awards. I'm a huge movie fan. You're a huge movie buff. From listening to the Skull Rock podcast, you go see way more movies than I do.
Yeah, you know, I actually try to go to the movies once a week, where I actually go into a movie theater. And I'm pretty good about doing that when I'm in town. When I travel, it becomes a little bit more difficult. But I do watch some movies on, you know, the streaming services now. And but I love the movies. I just am a fan of movies.
Yeah, I'm much the same way. I don't go once a week. I try to go once a month.
Yeah.
And even that sometimes isn't easy. Have you always been a big movie buff?
Yeah, I really have been. I mean, as far back as I can remember, I remember going to the local movie theater when I was a kid, and seeing some of the big movies that were coming out. I remember seeing a re-release of Pinocchio at a local theater, when I was, I think, in grade school. And, so, for me, it's just, the type of entertainment I love. You know, there's a lot of people who go to concerts. They love going to live concerts. I'm not that person. I like to go to movie theaters. In fact, I'd go see concert films in a movie theater, you know? But I thoroughly enjoy it. And I also, fortunate here in Los Angeles, TCM, or TM, is it TCM or TMC?
TMC, I believe.
Turner Movie Classics, or Turner Classic Movies, TCM.
We don't have them in Canada. So.
Okay, but they have a program where they re-release classic films that have been restored into the movie theaters. So like once a month, I can go. I've seen Casablanca, The African Queen, In the Heat of the Night. Citizen Kane. I've seen so many great classic films projected on a big screen. Which is how they were made. They were made for, being seen in a big, in a big movie house and not on your television. So any chance I get, I try to go to see some of those. And then also the Motion Picture Academy, which I'm a member of, they do monthly screenings of classic films as well. I remember going down to the David Geffen Academy Theater at the new Academy Museum in Los Angeles and seeing Bride of Frankenstein, completely restored, the 1935 Bride of Frankenstein, projected on a big screen. Beautiful. I mean, it was gorgeous, black and white. So I thoroughly enjoy going to the movies.
I'm right with you. I'm right with you there. I got to go to more of the classic ones. They do release them from time to time here too, and I really I should make it a point to actually start doing that because I know I would love that. You mentioned you're a member of the Motion Picture Academy, which was kind of why I reached out to talk to you. Growing up, the Oscars night was a big night in my household. My mom was a big movie fan. She grew up in the movie theater when she was a little girl in the 50s. And then my life was growing up in the movie theater. I was either in the movie theater or I was in the arcade in the basement of the movie theater. Growing up. Yeah. But we would watch the Academy Awards and I would say to her, like they would say that the members of the Academy, and I would say to my mom, who are the members of the Academy? And my mom was very much into these National Geographic or National Enquirer magazines and whatnot. And so she a lot of her information wasn't correct. Like she was convinced that Walt was frozen and was going to be brought to life one day. Type of thing. But she told me that the members of the Academy is a secret society and nobody knows who they are. And even like the movie producers don't know who they are or anything like that. And they're the ones that decided. It was very hush hush and whatnot. It's not like that at all.
No, it's really not, but it is a professional organization and there is criteria that has to be met in order to become a member. You don't just automatically become a member. You have to be sponsored, not just by one person, but by two people who are already Academy members. You also have to have a certain number of screen credits in your chosen area to qualify. And then all of that doesn't guarantee you. It has to go before the branch committee. So the Academy is made up of many branches, and each branch is a discipline or specialty within the motion picture business. So you might have, makeup artists, and you'll have actors, and you'll have producers, you'll have directors, you'll have writers. They're all different branches, and those branches are the ones that evaluate and come up with the nominations for each of those categories that they give out a statue for. And then once those nominations have come out, then it's the entire membership that votes on the Academy Awards.
Oh, okay. So basically, like say the cinematographers would nominate 5 movies for the cinematographer category.
Right.
And then all the members would watch and pick which one of those 5.
Which one they think is the best for cinematography.
Okay.
Yeah.
See, I was misunderstanding it. My understanding was that you vote on your branch only. So you end up voting on every category.
Yeah. So you initially vote for the nominations within your branch, and then there's a master ballot that has all of those nominations, and then everybody in the Academy votes on that ballot.
Right. So what branch are you in?
I'm in the animation. It's the feature animation and shorts branch.
Very cool. So in order for me to become a member, I have to make a couple of movies first or be involved in a couple of movies first. And
you'd have to have screen credits on I think at least 3 films. But that may have changed from, Stan, I've been in the Academy for more than 30 years. I think it's like 36 years actually. So, they update and make changes and, all of those kinds of things. And so those particular rules may have changed since I got in. Mm-hmm. But it's like I have like 30 plus 32 or 33 theatrical screen credits from my career. Maybe even more than that. I don't know. But at the time that I got in, I know I had at least 3 because I couldn't have done it if I didn't have at least 3.
Yeah. So Stan Solo has no chance of becoming a member of the Academy as of today.
Well, I mean, if you have no screen credits, I would say that's a pretty good bet.
Good night, everybody. Interview's over. Drive safely. No, just joking. I might have one coming up because it was a fan-made documentary, and I funded it with a GoFundMe. They made a donation, so I think I'm going to be in the screen credit for that. So I might get one for that one.
Okay. All right. But then you still have to get two sponsors.
Yes.
Two people in the business who say, well, Stan is worthy of membership in the Academy. So,
yeah, exactly.
Sometimes that could be a hurdle.
For sure. I watched the Grammys the other night, or last night, I guess, as we're recording this. They said there are over 13,000 voting members. Do you know how many members there are in the Motion Picture Academy?
Gosh, I don't know, but I'm willing to bet that there's probably over 10,000.
Yeah.
But I honestly don't know.
Yeah. Is there like a secret handshake or anything like that when you meet another member?
No secret handshakes. But we kind of all know each other, because a lot of times, you're voting on people to be, a governor of your branch, to represent the whole branch. So, every couple of years they have a list of everybody who's in the branch, and you have to pick so many names out of that. That's how they boil it down,
Oh, yeah. So other than voting for the Academy Awards, is there anything else involved in being a member? Is there, like you say, they have screenings sometimes? Was there anything else that besides the Academy Awards and voting for that? Is there more to it?
Yeah. I mean, you can determine your involvement. To how much you want to spend, your time with the Academy. You can run for office, you could be a governor, you could be you can be as involved as you want to be, or just be somebody who goes to the movies all the time, and votes and watches all the shorts and all of those kinds of things and comes up with the nominations and this and that. So,
okay. Is it necessary for, do you have to watch every movie that's being nominated, or just ones that kind of there's a lot of movies that get nominated?
Yeah, I think okay. I was not far off, Stan. As we were talking, I went in and found that there are 10,894 members.
There we go.
In the Motion Picture Academy as of 2024. And this includes 9,905 voting members, 949 non-voting members, or emeritus members, as they are called, and 40 associate members. So there's your answer.
There we go. So if you're a non-voting member...
I ballparked pretty good.
You ballparked really good. So if you're a non-voting member, that means you don't have to watch the movies. If you are a voting member...
Yeah. I mean, look, I'm
sure you're encouraged.
This is a professional organization.
Yeah.
If you're going to vote on something, you should watch the films.
Yeah.
And so I go to the movies throughout the entire year. I like to see films in a theater with a sort of a non-professional audience, because it's a communal experience. You can kind of hear people's reactions. Oftentimes, if the movie's very good, people applaud at the end of the film when it ends, at least at my local theater. And so, yes, I'll probably go and see 40 plus films a year in the movie theaters. Plus, they used to send out to us, starting in September, October, you would start to get DVDs. This is before the streaming services. And I would get upwards of 70 DVDs.
Wow.
Mailed to me by all the different studios, because they want you to watch their movies.
Mm-hmm.
And so oftentimes I used to, the day after Thanksgiving, when my wife went out, for a mad dash on Black Friday sales, I would not leave the house, and I would just put one DVD in after another. And some of these movies, there's so many movies that come out, you never hear about half of them. They're little movies. They don't get wide distribution. So sometimes I'll put a DVD in and I'll watch 10 or 15 minutes of the film, and if it doesn't really pull me in, I take that out and I put the next one in, right? So, but you kind of know as a film buff, what the big movies are every year, right? Yeah. So I make it a point to see all of the big movies for sure, but when it comes to the animated features, I try to watch all of them, And so, and then now they don't really send you DVDs because the Academy has its own streaming service. It's a streaming app. And the only way to be able to get into the streaming app is you have to be a member, and you have to, essentially register your television, and you get a special code, and there's, the QR, the QR code on the screen when you log in, and then you have to go on your computer and, two-factor verification and all this stuff.
Sounded like the DVDs were a lot easier.
Yeah, it was a lot easier with the DVDs. But, the fact that I can go on the streaming service and watch any of the films, and more importantly, I can watch all the shorts at my leisure, right? Because the short films are the ones that are tough to really see because there isn't as wide a distribution of those. Yeah. And so being able to watch all of those on a streaming service, and I think I watched something like 45, 50 shorts, over a several week period where, every day I said, I got to watch like 4 or 5 of these,
And these are the animation shorts.
The animation shorts. There's also live action shorts. There's documentary and documentary shorts and things like that. So, I think as a member, you should be diligent about seeing all of the films, especially the big ones that are going to get the nominations that have the buzz to them.
So I'm looking at the nominated shorts for this year. It's Beautiful Men, In the Shadows of the Cypress, Magic Candles, or Candy, Wander to Wander. And
right.
So you saw them all?
Yes.
Which would you pick?
I'm not going to tell you because they really don't want us to talk about, especially, with voting, even if voting is closed, to me, it's one of those things. I don't talk about which films I think should win something. I may tell you which films I like. So
I was going to say, can you tell me 3 I should watch?
You should watch all 5.
Watch all 5. There we go.
Because they got nominated.
There we go. That's the way. That's a good answer. I like that. I like
now,
that.
When it comes to feature animation, I've been a little bit more vocal, especially on the Skull Rock podcast, of the films I really like for last year. And and I don't mind talking about that, but I do want to be careful because I don't think it's proper to really, go off on, this should win or that should win. But, there's a couple of really good features within that mix. And if you're looking at the list, which ones have you seen?
So there's Flow, Inside Out 2, Memory of a Snail, or Memoir of a Snail.
Yeah.
Walrus and Gromit, Vagrant's Most Foul, and The Wild Robot. So of those 5, I only saw Inside Out 2, and I had every intention in the world of seeing The Wild Robot, as well as Memoir of a Snail. I just didn't end up near me.
Yeah, the thing I would say about that list is if you have the opportunity, I would go see The Wild Robot in a theater because it's an absolutely beautiful film.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
the environment, the environments are gorgeous. The film has a very strong heart to it. I'm very, very positive on The Wild Robot, and I also love the fact that it is really sort of an original property coming out. You know what I mean? It's not a sequel or anything like that. I think one of the things about the list that you just read off of the feature films that were nominated, to me, the film missing from the list, or I shouldn't say that it's missing. I mean, the fact is that Disney Animation for the 3rd year in a row has not gotten a nomination for its film for Best Animated Feature.
And that's the thing. Like I keep talking about on this podcast and any podcast that I'm on is that how people say, well, Disney makes too many remakes and they make too many sequels. People, that's the ones you're going to go see in the theaters, and that's why they're making them. The original movies, like even myself, I'm being perfectly honest, the only one of those I saw was Inside Out 2, even though I did want to see a couple of the others.
Yeah.
Go see original movies.
Yeah, and you know, part of the problem with the studio system today is that all the studios are part of, you know, global conglomerates for the most part. They're you know, they've got shareholders that, you know, management is beholden to. A lot of these films cost hundreds of millions of dollars. You know, like the Disney films, the Disney animated films are $150 to $200 million budgets.
Well, look at Wish.
Yeah, and now it took a faceplant. You know, and so did Strange World. It took a face plant. You know, Moana 2, you know, the first Moana film was really a very good film. The second one has done well at the box office, but not great. You know, I mean, in their minds, they probably feel happy about how it's performed, but the sequel didn't really have a heart to it, as far as I was concerned.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a problem. I think that, you know, coming out with, you know, multiple sequels is just, you know, mind numbing, because at some point people are going to get tired of it. It's going to be sequel fatigue, you know, and we saw that happening, you know, superhero fatigue, which is too many superhero movies coming out.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think that's why, you know, I've been really hot on telling people, go out and see The Wild Robot. It's a really terrific film, you know, and it's beautifully crafted. It has its own look to it. It doesn't blend like, you know, so many of the Pixar and Disney, Illumination, you know, DreamWorks films, even though The Wild Robot is a DreamWorks film, you know, I'm just going to pull that aside because the filmmaking team led by Chris Sanders, you know, did an amazing job on that in coming up with something that had a beautiful look to it that didn't look like every other, you know, film that was coming out, you know. But, you know, nowadays you look at a film like, you know, Moana 2 and Inside Out 2 and, you know, the Illuminations pictures and those things, and they're sort of like a house style that's blending together.
Yeah,
you know, like you could go into the middle of the country, yours or mine, and you know, put different you know, titles, you know, a different studio logo on the head of Moana 2, and people would be, you know, okay. Yeah, that's a Pixar movie, or, you know, that's a, you know.
Well, and that's the thing with the computer animation too, is it does kind of begin to become a fog almost.
Yes, absolutely. You know? Yeah. And I've been, you know, Aljon and I have talked about that on the Skull Rock podcast a lot of time, you know, a lot over the last several years that we're doing the show. And so, you know, I think it's something that people really have to look at. You know, when you look at the history of Disney animation, you know, aside from, you know, the early couple of pictures that they did, Snow White and Pinocchio, which had that sort of European book styling, you know, you start to look at pictures like, you know, you get to Cinderella, you know, that was a pivotal stylistic change, you know, and
Sleeping Beauty, even more so.
Sleeping Beauty and 101 Dalmatians and Jungle Book. They all had distinctive styles and looks to them.
Yep.
And, you know, the common denominator was that beautiful, full Disney animation. But, you know, stylistically, they changed. And I think that was a good thing. And now, you know, I think they have to really start to work on it. And you're seeing glimmers of it with a film like the Wild Robot. Or if you go back a couple of years, the Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, Into the Spider-Verse. Those two have a very distinct, beautiful comic book on the screen come alive look. The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the last Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles feature that was done, also had a very beautiful art direction, production design to it that I think, sort of set it apart. And so when I go to see films, I want that. I want to see something different, I actually just went to see Dogman, which was released this past weekend in the theaters. And, again, that had its own look to it, which I thought was, really enjoyable. It was kind of a frenetic and ridiculous and cartoony and fun. There was just some fun stuff in it.
I have to go see that one. I think that sounds like a fun one. The new Spider-Man one that's on Disney Plus right now, that's just come out, that has a very nice look to it too, and some really unique animation styles. I don't recall ever seeing, like, with the panning of the camera following Peter walking down the hallway of his house and turning into his bedroom, and the camera follows him. A lot of great new things.
Yeah, I haven't seen that one yet. Aljon and I talked about it in our picks of the week because Aljon watched, I think, the first couple of episodes.
Yeah,
and he was commenting on that. He really liked it, so I'm going to be checking that out, but I haven't watched it yet.
Yeah, I love the camera angles they're choosing in that animation for the new Spider-Man. You mentioned the timeline to vote. What is the timeline to vote?
Oh, I have no idea. They just send me emails saying, like, voting opens on this day and closes on this day. So usually the Academy members are voting within like a week or two of the actual awards.
Okay.
Is what I remember every year. So I'm actually looking up.
Yeah. So the awards are on March 2nd, Sunday, March 2nd.
Yeah, so the final
probably
ballot,
have to the end of February type of thing.
Yeah, the final ballot's going to come out, I think, in a couple of weeks. And I'm just looking up what. So
you got probably about 2 or 3 weeks then to place your votes.
Yeah, it's usually a couple weeks right before, right before they air the broadcast. It's really not that far in advance of the broadcast.
Yeah, very, very neat how they're able to do that. Have you ever been to the Oscars?
Yes, I've been a couple of times to the Oscars, and it really is an amazing experience.
So I know it's in the Dolby Theater, which is kind of attached to a mall, and they sort of cover up the mall part of it.
Yeah, well, what they do is they shut down Hollywood Boulevard, and they put up a big tent, and your limo drops you off in front of that tent, and you go through security and metal detectors. And then you walk the red carpet and then into the theater. And it really is kind of a fun event. I went once early on just because I got tickets and I could. And then the second time I went for Destino, which got nominated in, I think it was 2003, if I'm not mistaken. And that was nominated. And so, I went with Roy E. Disney and Dominique Monfriere, who was the director of the short. Those two were on the, like they would have gone up on stage.
Yeah.
And then our producer, Baker Bloodworth, was there. I went, I had my wife, Nancy, with me, and Roy's wife, Patty. There was 6 of us.
It was a good company to rub elbows with there.
Yeah. No, it was a lot of fun, and we were sitting in the balcony, and Roy and Dominique, Roy, Patty, Dominique, and Baker were sitting down in the orchestra seats because of they got 4 seats for that, and so Nancy and I were one up in the balcony, and it was really terrific. And afterwards, we met out in the lobby, and and actually, I'll just tell you a great story. We were standing around in the lobby of the Dolby Theater chatting about what we wanted to do, because the nominees that would have gone up on stage, Roy and Dominique, they had tickets to the Governor's Ball afterwards. We didn't. But, I was like, well, Nancy and I could take the limo home and then send it back for you guys after he'll be here, for when you come out of and Roy, everybody was sort of hemming and hawing what to do. And Roy finally looked at his wife, Patty, and said, Patty, what do you want to do? And she says, well, I'd really like to go get an In-N-Out burger. And by the way, while we were talking, Steve Jobs was patiently standing, waiting for an opportunity to kind of pop in and say hi to Roy.
Oh, wow.
And that was a real treat. And so we wound up, they decided not to go to the Governor's Ball, and the 6 of us went down they had a special area set up where they called your limo from an off-site lot to come pick you up on the side of the theater, which would have been Hollywood Way. So it was pulling up to the curb, and you trot down and get in. And so we were going to the valet table, I guess, have them call our limo up. And Alec Baldwin and his brother Billy Baldwin, who they went to my high school back on Long Island, and I had their father as my 10th grade social studies teacher. And so Billy recognized me, and I said hi, and we chatted for a second. He introduced me to Alex, who I didn't really know very well, and then I introduced them to Roy Disney, and Alex just talked to Roy all the way down the steps to the curb while we were just like starting to get into the limo. He was just chewing his ear off. But it was a lot of fun. And then we went to the In-N-Out Burger over on Cahuenga Boulevard, and the limo driver tried to go into the drive-thru, but couldn't. The car was too long to make the turn.
Yeah.
So he had to back out. And then a couple of us jumped out, went in, got a whole bunch of burgers and fries, and then got back in the limo. And the limo took us to Roy and Patty's house in Toluca Lake, and we sat around their dining room table eating burgers. And Roy opened a magnum of red wine, and we were just eating burgers and drinking wine until like 1, 2 in the morning. And that was the evening. It was a very memorable evening.
That sounds better than the Governor's Ball to me any day.
Yes, and that was my last time to the Academy Awards. So it's like 2003.
I was waiting for you to say that Alec and Billy hopped into the limo to go to In-N-Out with you.
I know, really. That would have been funny,
No, that's funny. I heard, I don't know if you know the answer to this or not. Maybe you do, but with the fires happening in California, I was watching the news, and they showed they were going through the rumble or whatever, one of these houses, and they actually found an Oscar that had been destroyed.
Yeah.
From these horrible fires. Is that something the Academy would replace, do you think?
I'm pretty sure, especially given the horrific nature of these recent fires. But I have heard in the past that they have replaced statuettes that were destroyed because of a fire or some natural disaster. And I would imagine they would have look, I don't think it's a big deal as an Academy member. I think they should do it, especially if somebody's lost something in a fire like that. I believe that they will do it and can do it, but don't hold me to that.
Yeah.
Okay.
My understanding is that you're not supposed to ever sell your
No,
statue.
you're not, and there have been statues that have sold over the years.
Yeah. Oh, I've heard of Vegas pawn shops having them.
Yeah, exactly.
Stuff like that.
Yeah.
And,
so, and you know, look, I think when they become vintage, 50 or 60-year-old statues, then it becomes a little bit dicey about, who's doing what with them. But I know the Academy is somewhat vigorous in stepping in on those types of situations.
Yeah. And they could tell whose Oscar it would have been because it has the name and everything. Well, not the name, but the year and the what the category was.
Oh, and the person's name gets engraved on it. In fact, people that win the statues and typically, I remember when I was at the Academy Awards, there was some sort of a table that had an engraving machine, and they would take the statue and engrave your name on it.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so
I actually did the tour of the Dolby Theater. It was just shortly before the Oscars, actually, and we were able to go on stage, and they already were kind of putting the faces of the actors where they're going to sit.
Yeah,
in the theater, beautiful theater.
Yeah,
the person that was giving me the tour. He says he works the door, and he says everyone that comes in has to have an invitation.
Yes,
they're not allowed in. If you forget your invitation, you're not getting in.
You're not going to get in.
And he said it was his first year doing it, and it was a big star. I can't remember who it was, but it was like Jack Nicholson type celebrity. And he came in and he said, "Oh, I don't need an invitation. I left it. It's on my dresser." And he was just a kid at the time. He goes, "Oh, well, you're not supposed to come in then." And so he radioed his boss saying, "I don't know. I'm just going to say Jack Nicholson, but I don't think it was. Jack Nicholson's here. He doesn't have an invitation. What do I do?" And he goes, "Relax, kid." I got it. He says, "I'm just, playing with you." The invitation, but yeah. So that's don't forget it if you ever do get.
Yeah. No. Seriously. Yeah.
Yeah. So I know you can't. You said Wild Robot is one that people should definitely check out.
If you get a chance, you should see that in a movie theater.
For the best picture category, is there something that people should definitely go see if they can only see one movie before the Oscars?
If there's only one movie out of the movies that were nominated for best picture, and there's 10 nominations, I would go see. Read off the names to me, sure. Because I just slipped my mind. It's the
Anora, which is like neon,
right?
The Brutalist, A Complete Unknown, which is one that I might go see.
Thank you. Tomorrow. A Complete Unknown is the movie I think is one of the best movies of 2024. I think Timothée Chalamet, he embodies Bob Dylan. In fact, there's a couple of shots in the movie where he's walking along and you go, "My God, that looks exactly like a young Bob Dylan." The hair was exactly the way it should have been and everything. So, and he does his own singing and guitar playing, of these Dylan songs. And it's absolutely fantastic. And Edward Norton, who plays Pete Seeger, actually embodies Pete Seeger's mannerisms and the way he spoke. And, it's absolutely fantastic. It's a really, I think, a great movie.
Yeah, and they're both nominated in their categories as well.
Yeah, and by the way, I think it's probably one of the best, musical biopics I've ever seen.
I was supposed to go see it actually with my brother's a huge Bob Dylan fan.
Yeah,
and we were going to go see it, but somehow he missed Christmas with his girlfriend's parents, so he had to go to that instead. So I should have to give him a call and say, "Let's go see it tomorrow," because I believe it's still playing. It's still playing. It's
worth seeing on a big screen in a movie house with a great sound system.
Yeah. What's next for you? I know you're going to attend the Animation Y'all Expo in Nashville with your co-host from Skull Rock Podcast, Al John. What else do you have going on?
On February 14th, Friday, February 14th, I'll be doing a presentation on my House of the Future book at Modernism Week in Palm Springs, California. And that'll be followed by a book signing. So I'll be doing that. And then, a couple weeks, the following weekend, I should say, I'll be in Nashville at the Animation Y'all Festival. So, it's starting out to be a busy year. Mm-hmm. I'm working on other books. I'm always working on books. So I've got a big tome on the Disney World War II that I was trying to get out later this year, but it looks like it's going to slop over into 2026.
I like that idea.
Because it's got to be done right. And I'm not going to rush it, and I'm just there's a handful of things I still need to do. So it'll come out in 2026. I've got a 3D book another 3D book in the works on Knott's Berry Farm and the Calico Ghost Town. Look, I've got book projects, Stan, that go out to 2032.
Oh my gosh.
So I one a year. I'm just busy as can be, and I've got my fingers in other projects. I've got some animation projects I'm involved with, and I'm just busy. I've got a lot of stuff going on,
a lot of pots on the
plate. And we're still doing the the Skull Rock podcast, which is a weekly show. We've got a lot of great guests coming up later this year. It's just we're having a ball, and I'm just enjoying it.
That's so awesome. I wish I could come out to Nashville. Chris from Grand Circle Tour is going to be there.
Yeah, Chris is going to be there. She sent me a note saying she already got her tickets, and frankly, I think it's going to be a sold out event because it's the inaugural event. They kind of put a cap on, I think it's like 600 people or something like that for the 2-day event. But I think they're onto something. I think next year it'll be a little bit bigger event. They're going to grow it. But I think it's going to be the place to be in the center of the U.S. Well, sort of center east.
Well, in Nashville.
Nashville.
Yeah. I want to thank you so much for spending some time to join us today. Sorry about the ringing.
No worries. I stand. It was an absolute pleasure being on the show. I do want your listeners to know that they can go to davidbossert.com. There's a lot of free content there, and there's information on some of my books, and there's also a tab for free stuff. So if people have one of my books and they want it signed, they can send away for a signed book plate that's themed to the book that they're asking to have signed, and I can mail that to them. So it's not a problem if they're up in Canada. You just have to send me a stamped self-addressed envelope, and I will sign a book plate for you and send it back to you. And then a lot of my books you can purchase on theoldmillpress.com or amazon.com or Barnes & Noble. On theoldmillpress.com, you can get signed copies of a lot of my books. And I will tell you, for your Canadian listeners, it's expensive to send books to Canada. So hopefully they might have a postal box over the border or something like that.
You can get them at amazon.ca if you're Canadian.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
They're all available there as well. And then,
Yeah. And then, of course, we got the weekly Skull Rock podcast. We love doing that. We love, creating an oral history of the animation, the animation renaissance that happened in the late 80s to the 90s. And sad news, Joe Hale, who was the first guest we had when we kicked off the Skull Rock podcast. He was the producer of the Black Cauldron. He just passed away this past week. He was 99.
Wow.
So don't go, oh, you know what? It's part of the circle of life, my friend.
Yeah.
But if you can live almost a century, you did good. He had an amazing life, and it's a life to celebrate. But he was our first interview for the Skull Rock podcast some 5 years ago, or four and a half years ago.
And you can pick up Skull Rock podcast anywhere you listen to the solo show. If you're listening to the solo show right now, you can listen to Skull Rock podcast on the same podcast catcher.
Yeah, and I'm going to give the solo show a shout out on next week's Skull Rock podcast, which is what I always do whenever I'm on other people's podcasts. And Aljon and I always talk about other podcasts because it's a wonderful podcast community of people, talking about Disney and pop culture.
Absolutely. And you always have the most fascinating guests on Skull Rock. And they often go for 3, 4, 5 episodes because you got so much to talk about.
Well, something, Stan, I got to tell you, when we decided to do this podcast, one of the things I said to Aljon was, look, we can't cram somebody's 45-year career into 50 minutes.
Yeah.
Right. I want to have a good conversation. I want to ask questions, and I want them to tell stories, and if that lasts 3, 4, 5, 6 hours, well, that's what we're going to do.
Yeah.
We had Ron Clemens, who, he and John Musker directed some, great films like The Little Mermaid and, The Great Mouse Detective and Aladdin and, Treasure Planet and, all of these iconic films from that Renaissance of Disney animation. When we had Ron on, we wound up doing like almost 6 hours of interviews.
Well, yeah.
Because he had a lot to talk about, and I just was like, we got to do that, and because then it becomes an oral history that's living online, and hopefully 10 or 20 years from now, somebody who's doing research or writing about something, they could go and listen to those interviews and glean some information.
Well, yeah, like how you just said, your first guest is no longer with us.
Exactly.
You now have a recorded history of him talking about his history.
Not only his career, but also the Black Cauldron.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
a very underrated movie.
Yeah. So absolutely. And again, I just love doing the show with Aljon because, we kind of hit it off, and believe it or not, when I go to Nashville, it's going to be the first time in 5 years that we've been doing this show, it's the first time we're going to be actually in person together. Because, he lives in Nashville. I'm out in Los Angeles. We've never been in the same room together. Although he always tells me he interviewed me for like 5 minutes, like in 2012 or something or 2013. I don't know, when my first book came out, and they were just dragging me from one interview to the next, and I didn't remember them.
Yeah.
But
same with Grand Circle Tour. It just recently, I think we've all met each other now.
Yeah.
None of us have met each other when we first started.
Yeah. I think that's kind of a cool thing.
Yeah.
There's something really cool about that from the standpoint that you've connected through technology, and it's like you're pals for so many years before you actually really meet in person. And I think that's kind of neat.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened with us. Once again, Dave, thank you for sharing your time with us. I know it's one of your most valuable assets. But Ken's dying. He's dying to take it away. Ken, take it away.
Boy, it took you long enough to think of that. If you have a brilliant idea for a future edition of The Solo Show and would like to take your turn in the guest host's chair, then drop us an email at thesoloshow01@gmail.com. Tell us about your idea for a show and we'll contact you about a date and a time for you to join us. If you would just like to keep the conversation going or have a comment about a previous show, then visit us on Facebook at The Solo Show. Don't forget to join us on YouTube, like us, and subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to hit the notification bell so you'll never miss a new show. All logos, songs, music, and sounds that are made by and for Disney and its affiliates are owned by the Disney Corporation and are not, nor are they intended to be owned by the Solo Show podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show. Thanks for listening, and bye for now.